Yo, what's up? Um, yeah, so I'll just jump into it. So I'm gonna talk about something that I recently heard talk about by Myron Golden. Um, I've talked about this before, and he's talked about this before, but I want to talk about it just because I would say one, it's definitely relevant in my life, but also two, it's one of those things that it's one of those things that seems to just everybody seems to know it, but very few people do it. I would say, I would argue. Anyways, here's what it is. In essence, sacrificing the long term for the short term, right? Where instead of sacrificing the short term for the long term. Again, that's the essence, but it can go into it's a lot to unravel. So I'm gonna do my best here. Um, yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Okay. I just okay, cool. So I'm gonna mention a friend, but first I want to say talk a little bit about me. So well no, so I have this thing that I say often that I want to be the best version of myself I can be. And I want to do that because well one, because I believe that's what God wants, right? That's what he wants for his children is to be the best versions of themselves they can be in his name. Okay, cool. The other reason too though is because often, not often, but I've definitely had people who, not directly stated, but made the implication that they thought that seemed a little bit, egotistical per se, right? Like, because they interpreted that as like, for example, I want to be the best version of myself as a whole, but the big one that I'm really focusing on is I want to have more money. I want to have wealth. I want to be rich. Now, usually that is seen as, greedy and so forth. And again, sometimes maybe it is, right? But I don't want to be greedy for, I don't want to be, I don't want to be rich for the sake of being greedy. Like, I, time will tell and I will demonstrate my words through my actions when the time comes, but I want to have money for the sake of others. I do not intend on being the person that's just going to buy a bunch of unnecessary things. Now, mind you, I'm gonna treat myself. I'm gonna have a nice car, nothing crazy, but I'm gonna have a nice car. I'm gonna have a nice house, nothing crazy, but I'm gonna have a nice house, right? Like, duh, I would say. But no, like, I wanna make sure that I have a lot of money because money is important. I don't care what you say. If my mother can't work anymore and she needs to stop working, if the time comes, I wanna be able to do that. If somebody I care for and love or what have you says, hey, there's this problem and we just don't have the funds for it and it's serious, whether it be health or what have you, I want to be able to provide, right? And here's the other thing, again, the best version of myself, right? I've been blessed with having a pretty good head on my shoulders. Like, emotionally, I've got that pretty in check. Not always. um but no, like, in the last, I would say, year or two, it's pretty on point, I would say. It could always be better and it's always going to develop and get better, but my emotions are pretty good. My mental state, that's been pretty good for a long time. Again, same thing, always can get better and what have you, but compared to most, oh yeah, my mental state is pretty solid. Physically, hell yeah, I'm strong. I take care of my body because I want to make sure that I can provide for that. Help my mom with anything heavy, help my cousins, my family, my friends, whoever. It doesn't matter. I just want to be strong for the purpose of being able to utilize this vessel of mine for others and myself, obviously. So, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, doing pretty good there, I would say. But the one thing, again, these are all important variables of our life. Wealth, money, is also an important variable of our life. If you disagree with that, fine. Do you? But it's important. I I've never had that. Now, when I say never, I mean like to where money is not a problem, right? Like if money is needed, not wanted, that's different. But if money is needed, I've never been in the position where that's just not a problem. I can just where I can just be like, okay, that's fine. Let's take care of that. I've never been in that position per se. I've had moments, whatever, but I want to get to that point where that's just a constant in my life, right? Okay, cool. And so, yeah, okay. And so I stated that sacrificing the short term in the altar, sacrificing the short term in the altar for the long term, comparatively to sacrificing the long term in the altar of the short term, right? Most people, I would argue, sacrifice the long term the in the altar of the short term. What does that mean? I mean, it can mean different things, but in essence, I'm gonna talk about two friends. I'm not gonna say their names, but okay. So I have one friend who, and I think I've mentioned them before, not directly, but I have a friend who has so much potential as a human. Truly, he does. He's talented. He's good with people. He's very well liked. He's just got a lot of good qualities. However, he is sacrificing the short term in the altar of the long term. What does that mean? This friend of mine, he, instead of focusing on things that are going to move him forward, that develop his skill set, that make him more capable of having more, let's say, you know, again, I'm not going to talk about like job wise because that's not, no, but outside of work, right? Like his jobs are not great, but that's sometimes that's how it is. He could definitely have better jobs, but again, that's sometimes how it is, whatever. But outside of work, this friend of mine, I mean, he goes out and drinks with friends. The friends he goes out and drinks with, they're nice people. They're nice people. They're nice people. But they are not people who have that drive to be more, to be better, to move forward. They're not, respectfully. At least they have not proven to be through their through their decisions, right? Okay. So this friend of mine does things like that. He involves himself in alcohol. He involves himself in other substances. And the point I'm getting is he works and he does all these other things. The thing he doesn't seem to do, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but and I know here's the thing, he's tried. Like he has definitely attempted to do things that move him forward, but the problem is he falters all the time. Right? Like he just won't stick to it. He ends up just, letting life or the world, let's say, control him and make decisions for him. Okay. So he's sacrificing the long term and the altar of the short term. He's just deciding to do things that feel good right now, right? Whereas, and I'm gonna talk about another friend, but comparatively, because I'm making sure that I'm clarifying what the difference is, right? So that's that sacrificing the long term. So I'm sacrificing that. So that's not, sacrificing the long term for in the altar of the short term, so that I can have a good now, enjoy the now, right? Fine. Whereas me, I am sacrificing the short term in the altar of the long term. What does that mean? Well, all I really do these days is study, and with that, into like study scripture, the Bible, or study people, like listen and literally study people who fascinate me, who intrigue me in some shape, way, or form, or study concepts or philosophies and things like that. Things that help me develop help this thing be better understanding of everything around me, let's say, right? So I do that. I do work, obviously, and I do other things that are necessities, like I have dogs, I take care of them. I have a mother, I take care of her. I have family, I hang out with them when I can, and so forth. But in terms of, I don't really drink. I will on like certain occasions or what have you, but I definitely don't drink on the weekdays. I put that restriction on myself. And there is a sacrifice. I'm sacrificing drinking on the weekdays. Why? Because I wake up at 5 in the morning on the weekdays, and I don't want to put something in my body that will make it harder for me to wake up in the morning. And I want to wake up in the morning so I can get things done, so I can move forward, because alcohol will not help me in that. So that's one. Two, I don't really go out with friends anymore, which has been whatever. I don't really go out with friends that much. I mean, I still do sometimes, but not as much. And also, three, in my sacrificing of the short term, it also has kind of hindered many of my friendships, because they just, it's not that well, maybe they are judging me. I don't know. But, it's hard to say. It's not like people directly tell you, hey, I'm not really talking to you as much or hanging out with you as much for X, Y, and Z reason. That's not usually how that goes. But, yeah, no, just I assume that they just think it's weird. Maybe they don't like that I often I've set it up in a way where like they just don't even ask me anymore to hang out, because I was in a phase early on where I literally would say no all the time. And now they just don't ask me. And honestly, I would probably still say no if I were asked, just because, again, like, unless it's a special occasion, that's different. But if it's just like, hey, let's just hang out, and there's no purpose to it, I'd rather not. So I'm sacrificing that. Okay. Weed is another one. That one is still something I do sometimes. I'm not going to go into the why, but nonetheless, I put restrictions on myself. I don't buy it. I don't like to have it on me. I'll usually just do it if somebody is doing it and I don't have anything to do within the next 2 to 3 hours. Like, nothing that is like, I need this thing to be at 100, right? So, but different aspect per se. But no, still, I've restricted myself on that and so forth. Food, I make sure that I put good stuff in. I falter sometimes. Food is a hard one, but I'm doing my best. I work out, at least 3 times a day. I make sure that's consistent, so forth and so forth and so forth and so forth and so forth. Why? Because I believe that doing so will produce a long-term outcome I desire. What is that? Well, hard to say specifically, but one of them that I've already stated is having money, being rich. The reason I study certain people and the reason I'm trying to understand philosophies and concepts and things like that is because I am trying to find ways to be the person and do the things that will allow me to have that outcome, right? And also that's one reason, but a really big one, which is it's interesting to me, I would say, because I used to state that never mind, I'm not even gonna go there. A really big one as well is because here's how I see it. I see two versions. One, as long as God allows it, I would like to have a wife and kids, a family. And I do believe that God will provide that for me. I could be wrong though, but that's not the point. If and when that time comes, I want to make sure that all of those things that are important in our lives are in check. Primarily because I have all the other ones pretty good. Primarily money. I want to make sure that's good to go. Because I don't want there to be a situation where I can't provide that when it's needed. Yeah. And so that's one version. The other version, though, is, let's say that's not what God desires for me and I never find the one, and so be it. I still have people that I care for and love, and I still have people that look up to me, children that look up to me, nieces, nephews, cousins. I still have friends that look up to me. I still have adult family members that look up to me to some extent. I have people that I care for and love, and people that are watching me and that potentially will I guess just need me, right? And my purpose, I believe, is to please God and serve people. I want to make sure that I can be the best version of myself. So I'm developing myself continuously in all those variables. I'm always developing myself more and more as best I can. But money, again, because that one is the one that's least developed thus far at this point in my life, I need to make sure that's well developed as well. And I'm going to and again, when I have money, I'm not going to stop. Right? I know I mentioned money a lot, but that really isn't like the point. It is the point for me right now because that is the thing that I need to develop the most, because everything else is doing pretty good. But once I have that, from there, like, I'm going to keep developing that and everything else continuously till I die. Right? Well, again, so I'm sorry, I went off. I'm sacrificing the short term, right? Doing all those things I already brought up because I believe that that's going to lead to me having abundance in all aspects. I already have a lot of abundance, but there's always more. Always. So that's why I'm not going to stop. And that isn't selfish. Now, again, to some extent it is, right? Because yes, I am doing that for myself. But again, people who are broke, people who are not well developed in their way of thinking, in their emotional state, in their mental state, in their physical state, they cannot serve others to the best extent as someone who has more of either of those qualities. Right? I want to make sure that I can provide as much as I can to as many as I can over time for the rest of my life. And the other vision or perspective, not perspective, the other vision is not the word I was using before, but the other thing I see, so I mentioned one is wife and kids and so forth, but the other one, which is still part of the wife and kids, just one is not without it, is just being able to witness to people the importance of doing these things that I'm saying right now. So going back to, I said everybody knows about that, and everybody knows to some extent that you should sacrifice the short term and the altar of the long term and not vice versa, right? But why don't they do it? Because I'm pretty sure it's because we doubt that ultimately we'll get that outcome, that it won't be a waste of sacrifice. Well, if I sacrifice the short term and I don't end up getting the long term, woe is me. I wasted my youth. Fine. I would just say, because I don't want to go into it, I'm trying to make these videos short. I would just say it's a perspective. Like, I think to myself, like, it's time will tell. Again, that's why I am making these videos, and that's what I believe potentially is one of the values I'll be able to provide to others when the time comes, is just because I think about it like this. Again, I am developing myself in a way that is good for others, right? And continuously doing that. Like, again, I falter here and there, but I'm consistently like making sure that I'm faltering less and less over time, right? It's hard for me to believe you will not get, I may not get great abundance, Because ultimately, maybe God doesn't want that for me. So be it. But my perspective is this. In my sacrifice of the short term, will I in some shape, way, or form gain more in the long term? And the answer is yes. I don't care what you say. Sorry, maybe that comes off wrong, but you can argue that, or you can try to argue that, but like exercising, is that going to be better for me in the long term? Yes. Learning more and more, developing my mindset, developing my way of thinking, is that going to be better for me in the long term? Yes. Not drinking, not doing other substances, is that going to be better for me in the long term? Yes. You see what I'm saying? Like, even if you don't ultimately get all the greatness that maybe your ego desires, you're going to be better off. And again, you can argue that, fine, go ahead. But if you really think about it logically, you will be better off. So it's a perspective. You can say, oh, but I'm young now, I won't be young later. What is young? What is old? Because 50 is not, okay, maybe at 50, fine. But 40 years old is not old if you were taking care of this body. I fully intend at 40 years of age to still feel as good as I feel right now and still look as good as I look right now. Maybe not as good as I look right now, but but you get the point. Anyways, look, here's what I'm getting at, and I didn't get to talk about my other friend, but that's okay. Here's what I'm getting at. In terms of whether or not you should sacrifice the short term in the altar of the long term, whatever excuse you're going to come up with, whatever excuse, it doesn't matter what it is. My point is this. Unless you want to live a miserable life halfway through your life, sacrifice something. Just start somewhere, even if it's small, and go from there. That's my advice. And time will tell whether or not this advice will be fruitful. I believe it will, but we'll see. Anyways, that's all. Take care. God bless.